Is Argenti still worth it in version 2.3 and beyond? Now in this video, I want to talk about multiple things. Eidolons, this character himself, as well as maybe talk about the Lightcones also. Is he still worth it? The real big question really is, does your account need an erudition AoE attacking kind of character that is of the physical element? Since his arrival, we've had the pure fiction game mode coming about. This one here, which really brought the rise of Argenti for like at least the first patch. Thereafter, a lot of people found the other characters that are super fun to play as well. For example, like a Herta Himiko kind of combination. A lot of people are running this as their main team now. Even with Jade around, some people are just playing the three of them together. The question is Argenti then totally tossed aside? Is he totally worthless a character? The first things first, he fulfills a niche and he does the niche very well. If you look at the physical category here, even with new characters in the game, for example like Boot Hill coming in, who is arguably one of the best Hunt DPSs, Boot Hill is largely single target, Susang is largely single target, Luca is also single target in nature. The only characters that are not single target of physical element would then be Clara, as well as the upcoming Yun Li, who's of destruction, that we already know for sure. If Yun Li is similar to the other characters on this list, maybe she's single target Hunt or light nature, or perhaps she's like Clara, she counter mechanics. That makes Argenti actually the only character that hits in an AoE which scales off his own speed. Why do I stress scaling off his own speed? Because Clara in a sense scales off the enemy speed. Enemy move faster, you get more, you put out more damage. Enemy move slower, you inherently do less because you can't counter. And any counter characters will work in a similar fashion. For pure fiction, you don't have time to wait for the enemies to hit you. You want to dish as much damage as you can. Now, Argenti is, although he's niche and some people will say that it's not a necessary thing, but for those of you who are trying to round up your account, he offers you tons of damage in an AoE fashion. He has the lowest burst cost in the game of 90, and also the highest at the same time. So lowest 90, highest 180, which means that he actually works very well with certain Lightcones. For example, like today is another peaceful day that caps out at 160. So he gets the full cap straight away. That's what I'm using over here. You can see the number of points of energy increases his damage. So very great for that. He bursts so often, and you can have the choice whether you want to burst a lot or single, or this like burst many times with his 90 burst, or burst once with his 180 burst. He scales well with enemies that come into the game, into the field. Every enemy that basically coming into the game gives him 2 energies for himself. He gains more stacks whenever he does certain things, giving him a lot of crit rate and crit damage in his overall kit. For those of you who don't know, erudition characters generally need a lot of crit rate and crit damage, and having this in his overall kit is very nice. Not only that, he counters the one big deficit of erudition characters, and that is in his final full burst ultimate over here. His additional attacks all strike the same target, which means that he is good, especially if you only have one target left. You do even more damage to that particular target and helping you break that unit very quickly, allowing you to scale somewhat into single target teams, especially if Pure Fiction has a big boss weak to physical, but you need to burst him down very quickly as well. Meaning you could also build him for break effect. A physical break effect is of course very good, and play even into the likes of teams with Runmei if you really wanted to, or even teams for example with Boot Hill on the same team. Physical does scale off quite nicely with break effect too if you're trying to play an AoE DPS in Argenti. So we talked about his unique position, we talked about where he's good for, but the question then becomes, do you really need a character like Argenti, or can you make do with a character like Herta and Himiko? I think for the most part, Herta and Himiko has been clearing a lot of content because fire and ice are very common elements found in enemies. However, there will be a time where you have tons of physical and perhaps other categories that you don't have any erudition characters. So for example, let's just take the erudition characters into perspective. These are all the erudition characters that we have. What are we still missing right now? Probably is the imaginary erudition element. And that is probably one of the biggest one. Probably wind erudition we still do not have. And if they put, for example, a wind erudition, a wind imaginary and physical in the game mode, likely it's going to be a more challenging for all of us to start clearing, because we are relying on like physical and ice. Once they remove, or fire and ice, once they remove these two elements, you will start to feel the heat when you are lacking of erudition characters. And that is where I think that Argenti still fulfills a niche. But let's not sugarcoat things. Still, he is a very niche character. Out of the 3 game modes, Argenti is only played in 1, and not exactly the top tier. He comes and goes depending on whether physical is flavor of the month or not. You could argue that wherever you play Argenti, a well-built Akirion can also deal decently well, especially if you are playing with a decent team of other Nihility characters and stuff like that. Or a team of Himiko and Herta probably already does most of the job. So now that we've touched on that aspect, I would tell you my honest opinion. I don't really think he's very worth it right now, unless for the fact that you are a massive whale, you have a lot of resources, and you are just wanting to hedge your risk, make sure that you have every kind of possibility in the game. I think he is very likely that they might shift towards an Erudition, Imaginary, Win, Physical, and then you will need one of the 3 characters. But you might as well pull for the new character that they are trying to sell. At least you get some novelty. And so far, Knights of Beauty, haven't heard anything from them. Don't even know whether they have any synergies yet. But let's talk about Eidolons now. Some of you who already have base copy of Argenti, very lucky you don't have to make the decision. But now let's talk whether it's actually worth it to go for more stacks. So Argenti's E1 gives him 4% crit damage. He has 10 stacks, so you basically get 40% crit damage. I think this is very strong. Most characters on average, E1 is an increase of 20 to 30%. Argenti gains 10 stacks. Where's my 10 stacks here? His maximum stacks, 10 stacks of apotheosis, my gosh, 10 stacks, so you get crit rate, and on top of that you get a massive amount of crit damage, 40% crit damage. I think E1 is very, very good value for whatever nicheness that you need him for. It makes him very strong in that niche. E2, not so great. Attack increases 40%, don't really like it too much. You probably are going to run with another harmony that buffs you already. E2, not really worth it. E4 gives you 2 additional stacks, which means that you are effectively gaining 4% crit rate, 8% crit damage, probably thereabouts, about 20% damage gain at most. Don't really like it too much. And E6, of course, you spend $1,000 to get a 30% damage ignore, defense ignore. I don't think this is very great. I think Argenti caps off at E1. The rest of them is just not efficient way of spending money. And the last thing that I want to talk about, which is on the banner now, is Argenti's signature Lightcone. Now this one, I've talked about it before, an instance before a gaze. I find it a very, very versatile Lightcone. You get a massive crit damage, and you get this very generic stat that regardless of whether you are Erudition character that uses follow-up attacks, whether you're an Erudition character that just bursts, scales its speed, whatever not, this is very strong because it's very generic and very good as well. Scales up to 180 points and you get you 0.36% of your ultimate. I think this is super, super good because it's super generic. You can fit it onto any Erudition character. They will find some sort of value here and there. Whereas Jade's Lightcone, the one that you see over here, is slightly more niche. Brilliant Fixation, a bit more niche. Jingyuan's Lightcone, also somewhat more niche. And of course you get crit rate with Yet Hope is Priceless, but this one is crit damage, so you can actually scale very nicely with, especially if you have a lot of crit rate gear that you have, crit rate from other sources like Fucc, your relic mean stats and whatnot. Very, very good. The only thing that why I'm not pulling this one personally is because this 0.36% is actually inferior to the Battle Pass Lightcone, which is over here. This is 0.4% up to 160 energy. So if you're talking about versatility of Lightcones, the Battle Pass Lightcone is actually super versatile for much less cost because you get decent amounts of the energy points for a decent amount of stats already, and you don't have to spend like 70 pulls, 60-70 pulls for a signature Lightcone. You might lose the 50-50. I'd rather save that to get a new spanking new character and get one of these Battle Pass Lightcones for others. But of course, again, not everyone is willing to pay $10 in the game. So in that case, I think the Argenti signature Lightcone is actually one of the best parts about his kit. Very versatile. I can switch it to basically almost any other character here in this list. If I go into Erudition here, who uses energy, who scales with their damage, who can use crit damage, pretty much every single one of these characters here all can scale off it. That's what makes it unique. That's what makes it good. If you don't have money to get S5, today is another peaceful day, or you're not a pay to win, probably you might want to consider that. I think that's the best part about Argenti, at least right now. But last but not least, if you really like this character, don't let me dissuade you. Don't let my honest thoughts, my biased thoughts, because it's my just one man's perspective, tempt you into thinking otherwise. At the end of the day, if you haven't pulled for a first rerun, the second rerun has never come so far for any characters, and the next time you see Argenti could be 1 year away, given that it's a long queue right now. So do consider. at the end of the day, pull for characters that you would like. If you enjoy male characters, you find him a very dashing character, go ahead, pull him. Don't let me dissuade you. And guys, thank you so much for watching again. Do check out these other videos, which I think you might be very interested in as well. And see you in the next video. And make sure you like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching.